Hey everybody, got Matt Caldwell with us. He's our Lee County property appraiser. And today we're talking about exemptions for your taxes that a lot of people don't know about. So Matt, appreciate being with us, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to chat about this.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on, man. You're you're a good guy and you're always willing to talk about this stuff. And I was at a meeting and you were at a Remax Realty team and you brought up some really cool points. And now I'm in the business and I thought like some of them were kind of new to me. And it seems like there's a lot of exemptions that us Lee County homeowners may not know about or enough people don't take advantage of. So we can get into those.
Yeah, absolutely. So most people are familiar with the homestead exemption,
Right.
right? They've heard about that. That's the biggest one that's going to apply to the most people. To give you some perspective, you got about 550,000 parcels in Lee County, and about 225,000 of those are homesteaded accounts. So nearly half, really, of our tax base in Lee County is under a homestead exemption. Huge
Okay.
tax savings. If people own their home and live in that home full time, they need to make sure to apply for that. If there's nothing else they hear today, they got to make sure they do that one before we get to any of the others.
Yeah, well, Matt, you probably are right, man. I got all excited about all the hidden stuff, but like you are dead on right. We have so many clients, even though we tell them at closing, we tell them during the process, we send them reminders that still miss filing for homestead. Shocking.
Yep. Yep. So you got to get that done by March 1st of each year. We have a little wiggle room, but as the year goes on, each tax roll gets harder and harder for us to go back and address that with those homeowners. So the sooner they jump on it, the better. But as you indicated, there are a lot of other exemptions, like I talked about the other day. The first thing is in the Constitution. Florida's Constitution provides for potential exemptions for religious, scientific, educational, and charitable activities. So if you're involved in an organization that meets any of those metrics, you're going to want to reach out to us and talk about if you potentially qualify. There's going to be statutory implementation to all of those. There's going to be boxes that you have to fit in each of that. But if you've got a religious organization, scientific organization, educational organization, or charitable organization that owns real property, you're going to want to talk to our office and make sure that you're taking advantage of the options that are available to you for sure.
Okay. And so, I mean, you're talking about like you said science, right? So if some company involved in that owns like residential property, are you talking about commercial property too? What are we talking about there?
Well, for all these, it's going to be tied to the use. So it's not defined by what the property is as much as how it's used for. So the obvious ones, like the religious one, a church that owns a church building, you get a full exemption. You are totally exempt from taxation under Florida law. The same thing is going to be true for a school. And, a school, an educational operation, isn't necessarily going to be in a traditional classroom building. It could be in your house. It could be just like the way you put a commercial business into an old residential structure.
Right.
Same thing with all these. So it's going to be determined by the use, purely commercial. So that scientific one, it's kind of some old early 20th century language in the Constitution, but it's going to be about research. So essentially, you're not a college, but you're a nonprofit research institution. That's the kind of category you're talking about for that exemption.
Okay, gotcha. But that would fall like on other, whatever they own other land too, right? Like that, it would be the same type of thing.
Again, it has to be used for that. So we run into that a lot for churches, congregations that buy a new parcel of land. They're going to build a new building. When do they qualify for the whole exemption? And the key is they've got to use the property. So even if you haven't gone through the process of, you haven't finished your new building, but you got to demonstrate that you're using the property for the church purpose. You're holding meetings there. You got a tent there. You're doing picnics and events. And, you got to make a good faith case of how you're using the property. Because that's a huge tax benefit, a huge exemption that's afforded your organization from the remaining taxpayers. And so, our job is to make sure that anybody that applies under those categories is meeting the legitimate purpose.
Okay.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Now those are the big ones, probably the only other two in the big category. And then we're going to get into really the small small, but they're really individualized personal property for your personal residence. But the other two big categories are your agricultural classification.
Yeah.
People hear about that. The key point is, are you operating a bona fide business? The statute specifically prohibit us saying you have to have a minimum number of acres or a minimum number of trees or a minimum number of cows or et cetera. What you have to demonstrate, just like kind of I was talking about in the religious context, is, are you running a legitimate, a bona fide business is what the statute says. Is that use, where's the property that this use is being conducted on? And so we're going to have to really talk about with those folks, the specific circumstances. What are they doing? How are they doing it? Every situation is different. The way you raise cows is different than the way you raise trees and different than the way you raise bees. And getting into those details requires a lot of communication. But it's a huge tax advantage for folks if that's a business line they want to get into.
I want to ask someone
Yeah.
that. So like back in the day, like my thoughts were like an ag exemption is, hey, throw some cows on there, and you'll get the exemption. And so is it like that too? Like if you have cattle on your property, the exemption happens, or does it have to be a legit business that's buying and selling cattle, or like my kid sells eggs, right? Does it have to have like a legit business set up, an LLC and all, or whatever? Like how does that work?
Well, that's exactly why we've got to talk through the circumstance. Tell us your story is our byline for all of these questions, because we have to distinguish between a hobby and an actual business, a bona fide business. And some of that is going to be talking about, all right, if you've got 3 chickens and, every couple of months you sell a carton of eggs, you're not running a real business, right?
Come on, Matt, what do you mean?
But size isn't a key point, right? You can also be really intensive on an acre or a half acre of land with selling orchids and bromeliads, and you could be running a pretty significant profitable business on what is a relatively small piece of property. And part of that conversation is also going to be us talking through what is the best situation for you as the taxpayer, because there are some super intensive agricultural operations where the value of that is actually going to be more than the just regular native value of the land as undeveloped. And so you also you're going to want to talk through those situations where it really doesn't benefit you as a taxpayer to apply at the other end of the spectrum. It's all down to that conversation and hearing the story and making a case that what you're doing is a credible bona fide business.
So, okay, so just one last question on that. So like,
Yes.
I own 5 acres and I've got some goats on there, chicken coop, producing eggs, and, a few cows and a donkey. Okay. I'm not selling anything out of there, but I do have like what I would consider an agricultural type of property, but I'm not using it to make money or sell anything. That doesn't qualify for ag, correct?
Correct. That's just a hobby. You need to be demonstrating that you're doing some kind of business activity.
Okay.
And again, every situation is different. That doesn't mean that I need to see you hold an auction every 2 weeks. But you need to be demonstrating that you've got an intention to sell, that you have sold in the past. And the litmus is going to be, where are you? If you come to me and you're a known cattle rancher, your family's been buying and selling cattle for 100 years in Lee County, and you're say, I'm going to lease another 50 acres to incorporate into my existing operation, that's a pretty straightforward conversation.
Right.
If you moved here yesterday and bought 5 acres and say, hey, I've got 4 chickens. Okay, well, what's your business plan? Where are you gonna show me how many farmers markets are you going to each year, to just something that demonstrates that you've got a legitimate bona fide being the term in the statute.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. And then kind of similar to that is our working waterfront, and that's been around for about 15 years. Much like the ag classification, the goal is to keep agriculture on the landscape, keep it from being taxed out of existence, so to speak. Working waterfront is very similar. We don't want to lose the commercial fishing industry, the areas where it's easy to see that waterfront property is very, very valuable. And this hurricane is really a big inflection point. In fact, we are revisiting the entire book of working waterfront in Lee County as a result of the hurricane to talk to folks. What are you planning to do? Are you going to reopen the marina and keep that as a port, so to speak, for the public, or are you going to tear that down and build condos, which is probably the more profitable long-term decision. But if you intend to stick around, keep that waterfront-based business in operation, you definitely want to talk with us so that we can get you classified if you meet the statutory metrics. And it's going to be the same thing, trying to keep, you'll be taxed based on that use rather than the highest and best use as a development tract.
Gotcha. All right.
Yep. And then you get into the individualized ones. So we've got several different, you've got seniors exemptions. Now that is for low income seniors. If you, essentially the easy metric is if your only source of income is Social Security and you're over 65 years of age and you've lived in your home for a very long time, you can possibly qualify for a total exemption from taxes. The legislature doesn't want to see longtime homesteaded seniors kicked out of their house because they can't pay their taxes.
Amen.
That's a category we try to reach out to those folks. Every year we identify the ones we think will qualify, but not everybody communicates with us. So if you just know somebody that's in that situation, encourage them to talk to us because it could make a big difference in their life financially.
It's just got Social Security is their only source of income.
Well, I mean, the metric is low income, and when you take the metric of where the cutoff is, it basically that's what it's going to be. I mean,
Okay.
If somebody's getting Social Security and a pension, they probably will be higher, but they should still talk to us. I mean, if they've been in their home a long time and they're over 65 and they are low income, they're on a fixed income, they should talk to us and let's make sure, because they probably is one of these other ones that they do qualify for, even if it's not that total exemption from taxes. So we just worked this year, we meaning my property appraisers association, to update the widowers exemption. So if you have lost your spouse, you qualify. Used to be a $500 exemption. We got it increased to a $5,000 exemption. It's it's not as big as we would like it to be, but it's definitely an improvement. The original one was passed in the 60s, so it clearly had gotten pretty dated with inflation over the last 60 years.
Yes, that'd be $5,000 off your assessed value, right?
Correct. And so that flows through then to the tax bill, but that will certainly help. We've also got.
Can we pause on the widower one?
Yeah.
The widow one real quick. Is there income or age restrictions on that?
Nope. That is.
What about time frame of when the spouse passed?
No time frame.
Okay.
Not at all.
All right. Just writing notes for myself here, Matt.
Can't come down.
Some good ones, buddy.
And a good point to remind everybody there, if you want to visit our website, leepa.org, you will see an exemptions tab where all of these are outlined, and encouraging folks to either directly apply right there on the links or to call us and talk through their circumstance if they have questions. Let's stick in the surviving spouse. So we have an exemption for surviving spouses of first responders who died in the line of duty. And that is for anyone that follows the year following where that first responder died. And in fact, we just updated that this year as well. When we wrote it, when it was written originally back, I was actually in the legislature when we passed the original version 7, 8 years ago. The way it's been read is that it only applies to first responders that work for state or local agencies. It didn't cover federal, so U.S. Marshals, FBI, DEA, and we were running into circumstances, unfortunately, where those officers were getting killed in the line of duty. They were Florida homesteaded residents, and their surviving spouses didn't qualify. So we got that law updated this year, so they will. So anyone who's a surviving spouse of a killed in the line of duty first responder gets a significant exemption as well.
Okay.
And then we've got disability. There's the general, anyone that has a disability could potentially qualify for a $500 exemption. And then specifically for veterans, honorably discharged veterans that are disabled, from 10% to 99%, and you'll know you get that from the Veterans Administration. They could get a $5,000 exemption.
10% to what was your percentage?
10% to 99%.
No, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll qualify for that too.
They'll qualify for 5,000, and then if you are 100% disabled, then you get a I believe it's a total exemption. Yes, you get a total exemption. So if you're 100% disabled veteran,
Oh, really?
yes, you get a 100%.
So no real estate taxes for them.
No real estate taxes at all, and
Except for like
similarly,
CDDs or something like that, right?
so yeah, you're non-ad valorem. So for example, everybody in Lee County has the bill for trash collection. Typical house is going to pay, I think, $200, $250 a year. So they wouldn't be exempt from that. But all of their ad valorem taxation, city taxes, county taxes, school board taxes.
So if I can, I just want to plug a quick mortgage thing. That's what I do for a living here. When we, and maybe you can speak to this, so, but if you're listening to this and you're looking to buy a home, and maybe you qualify, you qualify for homestead exemption, all these certain exemptions, please understand that me or whoever, whatever lender you're going with, they're not going to give you credit for these exemptions until you file it with the county and the county approves it. So, you close whatever, February of 2023, and well, let's see, it's 24, February 2024, and the tax bill comes out in November, right? When we close in February of 2024, we're going to use whatever the current tax bill is for that property. Once you get all your exemptions approved through the county, then you notify your lender and the payment gets adjusted accordingly. But please don't expect your lender to give you credit for homestead and all these other exemptions, because the lender can't guarantee that you'll ever go out and apply, right, Matt? I mean, that's what happens.
Yeah, there's no automatic. It does require the homeowner to make the application. And the other key point is something we kind of glossed over, the date when all of this is applicable. January 1st is the date where everything is measured. Who owns the property on January 1st, how the property is being used on January 1st. So when you buy a property after January 1st, none of the things that you might qualify for based on your use or person, none of those can be applied till the next January 1st has come around. So right. You're going to, as you point out, the tax bill that comes out in November, well, that's based on what happened before you bought the property. So make sure as you negotiate your transactions that that's part of the conversation between the seller and yourself as the buyer about, hey, you, the seller, your situation is how this property is going to get taxed for this year. Let's make sure that we work that out in the planning. And that gets looked over, particularly because of the homestead and how significant those savings will build up over time. It can be a really big difference when it comes time to reassess.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And conversely, like when if the buyers we don't do this, but be aware, like if you're a buyer out there and you're looking at a house and that borrower's been homesteaded for 30 years and you're coming in as a new homeowner, you're going to get hit with a much higher tax bill than that other homeowner had because of homestead exemption. So just keep that in mind. They had homestead, right? I mean, I don't know if you said a lot, but we got to talk that one through a lot with borrowers. Hey, you're buying this house, it's 20 years of homestead, taxes are super cheap. Yours is going to be, more, here's the number. And we just make sure they're okay with it. We don't want to put anyone in a situation where, November, the bill comes out and they hate our guts and they can't qualify for the house anymore. That's bad news there.
Well, and that hit can come in that same year. Before we transition to that, just want to put a pin on the last one we were talking about, totally disabled veterans. There's also a non-veteran total disabled. It's definitional, but essentially it's quadriplegic, paraplegic, totally blind, and it has an income related. So it's similar to the veterans one, but it has some more criteria. So if you think you might qualify for that, that's definitely going to take a
Okay.
conversation with us. And that rounds out our exemptions. But since we're on this topic, this is one that we do get the most complaints about, is the reset of the cap
Okay.
on said property, and what does that do to people's taxes? The reset. Anytime a property transfers, it's going to reset the cap, except for some limited circumstances. So if you're going to put your property in an LLC, this is not just you sell it, but even you own your own property. If you're going to change substantially the way it's structured, the ownership, that will reset all the caps as well. So you want to think about that from day one when you buy a piece of property. If you don't want to keep it in your name, you want to put it in some kind of fictional entity, you're going to want to do that on day one if you can, because you'll otherwise be resetting all those tax savings. But let's talk about the buyer-seller dynamic. Back to your buyer. Buyer buys in February of 24. That tax bill comes out at the end of the year. Now, the tax bill was based on January 1st when the seller still owned the property. If the seller comes to us and says that they had already moved out before January 1st, then the homestead will actually be removed. Their homestead will be removed. Say, they decided to move to their condo at the beach, the seller did, and they wanted to take their homestead with them. So that cap will actually be removed in year one. So that new tax bill won't happen in 2025. It'll actually happen in November. And that's back to that point where you really want to talk through with between the buyer and the seller. If you've got representation as a realtor, talk through what does the seller intend to do if they're going to abandon the homestead in the property you're just getting ready to buy. That tax hit could actually come this year, not next year.
Mm-hmm.
So
No,
definitely want to
stuff,
talk through that.
Yeah, it can get a little complicated for the people too, and that's why just make sure you talk it through, and they can call y'all's office anytime, right, to talk that out.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, any scenario. Hey, I'm thinking about buying this property. Here's what I see the taxes are right now. What's going to happen to me? And now we can't tell you to say exactly this is what your tax bill is going to be $7,896. But what we can walk you through is how the reset occurs, because we don't know, we don't finish putting new property values on until the tax rolls develop later on in the summer every year. So you call us in February, we can tell you, yeah, if the cap resets, you'll go to full value. Yeah, it's in this ballpark, but we're not going to have a final number until we get the trim notice done and we send out those tax bills later in the fall each year. Right.
Gotcha. Cool, man. Good info. Anything else we missed?
No, I think we covered that. That covers the classifications, exemptions, and you've hit the point. When in doubt, give us a call. You can also go online. We've got the chat service, and it's all the same people: email, chat, phone, or you come into our building. You're going to get the same group of folks who work every day to answer these questions. They're experts at this, and they're there to help you.
Well, you got a great office there. LEEPA, we call it LEEPA, right? It's LEEPA, but I love this site, dude. So user friendly, because we do loans all across the state and nation. It's like, man, we jump on so many property websites from like, dude, they need to take notes from Lee County, because y'all's your website is just awesome, dude. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, we've got a great team. That foundation was laid before I even got here with my predecessor, Ken Wilkinson.
Shout out to Ken.
He had a real dedication to technology and making it available to the public, and we're just trying to build on that and take it to the next level.
Yeah, we did a video with him years ago. He came into the office, man, all decked out. He's a good dude. He's funny.
He's great.
I'll send it to you so you can check it out.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Matt, appreciate it. Have you guys any questions, concerns? You need help with mortgages? Let me know. Licensed all across the nation. Well, not across the nation, but a lot of states in the nation can help you out. Office number is 239-437-4278. And we're going to do another video about hurricanes as well in Lee County. So be sure to check that out as well. Matt, can they follow you anywhere, or what would you like these consumers to do if they want to keep up with Lee County property appraisers?
Yeah, well, we're on Twitter and Facebook, and I as well, and in my political capacity, they can find us there. Glad to chat, glad to connect, and just happy to represent the taxpayers of Lee County.
Cool, man. Well, Matt, thanks for being with us, buddy. Appreciate it.